Hunters on the Razorback Ridge. The morning mist clung to the whispering grass like a damp shroud. Three figures, Baran, Kale, and Darrow, emerged from the low stone huts of the Windwalker tribe, their breath puffing in the chill air. Each man, sculpted by years of hunting and foraging, carried a hefty spear with a tip dipped in nightshade, potent enough to fell even the largest cave bear. Their mission today, the Razorback Ridge. A treacherous, rocky escarpment notorious for its vicious rock goats and unpredictable storms. But the tribe's larder was bare, and whispers of rumbling bellies had filled the communal fire the previous night. The climb was arduous. Jagged stones scraped at their hide leggings, and loose scree skittered underfoot. Halfway up, Kale, nimble as a mountain cat, pointed ahead. A dark shape, colossal and unnatural, marred the ridge line. It wasn't a rock formation, it was too smooth, too artificial. As they crept closer, details emerged. Towering black metal plates formed a wall, its edges jagged and sharp. It ran for as far as the eye could see, isolating the summit behind a dark curtain. A sudden, metallic clang echoed through the valley. The three men froze. The sound wasn't natural, it resonated with a chilling intelligence. A shiver ran down Baran's spine. The stories of the elders, he whispered, his voice thick with dread. Legends spoke of a place beyond the Razorback Ridge, where metal giants rose from the earth and devoured all who dared approach. Kale, ever the pragmatist, scoffed. Elders' tales to frighten younglings. But Darrow, youngest of the three, saw the fear mirrored in Kale's eyes. None of them had ever seen anything like this. The metal wall felt oppressive, wrong. The silence returned, heavier and more unsettling than before. Baran, ever the leader, slammed his spear but down. We can't return empty-handed. We'll hunt the foothills, avoid. He gestured at the wall, that. A low, guttural growl rose from behind the metal barrier. The ground trembled, sending shivers down their already apprehensive spines. The three men exchanged a silent look. The hunt could wait. They needed to warn the tribe. This was a threat unlike any they had faced, and fear, for the first time, gnawed at their courage. With a newfound urgency, they scrambled down the ridge, the metallic echo of the growl a chilling reminder of the monstrous secret they had stumbled upon. Their descent was a frantic scramble. The growl seemed to grow closer with every step, a monstrous bassline against the frantic beating of their hearts. They reached the valley floor moments before another deafening clang ripped through the air. A tremor shook the earth, dislodging a shower of rocks from the cliff face. Baran stumbled, a sharp cry escaping his lips as a rock gashed his leg. Kale, ever the scout, glanced back. His eyes widened in horror. A towering metallic monstrosity, larger than any building they had ever imagined, stood silhouetted against the rising sun. Its form was vaguely humanoid, a nightmarish patchwork of black plates and glowing red vents. Giant, spindly legs took thunderous steps toward them, leaving craters in the earth with each descent. Panic surged through Darrow. He fumbled with his spear, the nightshade tip a pathetic hope against such a creature. Instinctively, they sprinted towards the thick cover of the whispering grass. The monster's metallic wail echoed through the valley, sending a flock of birds scattering in a flurry of panicked wings. The tall grass offered some protection, but not enough. They could hear the metallic behemoth crashing through the undergrowth, its movements deliberate, relentless. Fear turned to a primal desperation. Baran, his leg wound throbbing, stumbled. Kale grabbed his arm, hauling him forward. Suddenly, the ground gave way beneath them. A hidden sinkhole, masked by the tall grass, swallowed them whole. They landed with a sickening thud in a dark, dank cavern. The air hung heavy with the smell of rot and decay. Baran cried out as his leg gave way beneath him, a bone snapping with a sickening crack. Disoriented and wounded, they huddled together in the darkness. The metal giant's thumps grew fainter above. A false sense of relief washed over them, then shattered. Glowing, phosphorescent eyes gleamed from the cavern walls. Dozens of monstrous creatures, reptilian in form with razor-sharp teeth, slithered towards them, hissing with a hunger that sent chills down their spines. Baran, fueled by a desperate defiance, braced himself with his spear. He roared a challenge, a primal sound lost in the cavern's echo chamber. Kale and Darrow stood beside him, their faces grim, their spears held tight. They wouldn't reach their tribe. They wouldn't return to the warmth of the fire or the laughter of children. But together, facing the darkness with a warrior's spirit, they wouldn't go down without a fight. The cavern resonated with the clash of steel against fangs, the screams of men and monsters, a horrifying symphony, lost forever within the whispering grass. The stench of reptilian musk clung to them like a shroud as they scrambled out of the sinkhole. Dawn had broken, painting the sky with streaks of orange and purple. Baran, his leg a throbbing mess, leaned heavily on Kale for support. Darrow, his spear slick with ichor, scanned the horizon, his heart hammering a frantic rhythm against his ribs. The valley they knew was gone. In its place stretched a desolate wasteland of cracked earth and twisted metal spires that clawed at the sky. The air shimmered with heat, a stark contrast to the cool embrace of the whispering grass. The metallic giant was nowhere to be seen, but the chilling certainty of its pursuit gnawed at their resolve. "We must have been thrown far," Kale muttered, his voice hoarse. "The whispering grass is miles away." Despair threatened to engulf them. Lost, wounded, and with an unknown metal monstrosity hunting them, the odds seemed insurmountable. But Baran, fueled by a deep yearning to see his family again, refused to give in. "We follow the sun," he rasped, his voice laced with pain. "It always leads back east, to the mountains. The tribe will search for us there." They set off, a slow, hobbling march across the desolate landscape. The sun beat down mercilessly, draining their already limited energy. The silence was broken only by the rasp of their labored breaths and the dull ache of Baran's injured leg. Just as hope began to dwindle, a flicker of movement in the distance caught Darrow's eye. A swarm of dark shapes, reptilian and low to the ground, scurried towards them. The lizard beasts from the cave. A primal growl escaped Baran's lips. They hadn't outrun the horrors below. Kale, ever resourceful, spotted a cluster of jagged rock formations in the distance. "There! We can make a stand." With renewed determination, they pushed on, the lizard beasts gaining ground with each agonizing step. Reaching the rocks, they used their remaining strength to fashion a makeshift barricade, stacking boulders and jagged shards of metal, remnants of some forgotten civilization. As the lizard beasts surged forward, snapping and hissing, Baran, fueled by a desperate rage, used his spear to devastating effect. Kale and Darrow fought with the ferocity of cornered wolves, their spears a whirlwind of steel. But the lizard beasts kept coming, a relentless tide of hunger. Just as despair threatened to overwhelm them again, a deep, mechanical groan echoed across the wasteland. The ground trembled, and the lizard beasts faltered, their attention drawn upwards. The metallic giant loomed on the horizon, its colossal form dwarfing the desolate landscape. The lizard beasts, with a guttural screech, turned and fled towards the metal behemoth. A wave of relief washed over the three men, short-lived as the giant turned its glowing red eyes upon them. But this time, they weren't its target. It raised a metallic arm, its spindly fingers crackling with energy. A beam of white-hot light blasted down, vaporizing a nearby rock formation. The message was clear: they were trespassers, to be tolerated, for now. With a final, earth-shaking thud, the giant turned and lumbered away, leaving the three hunters battered, bruised, and utterly lost in a hostile, alien landscape. Their journey back to the tribe had become a desperate fight for survival, with no guarantee of ever seeing the familiar comfort of the whispering grass again. Battered and bruised, the three men emerged from the cavern, blinking against the harsh sunlight. The metallic monstrosity was gone, vanished as abruptly as it had arrived. A chilling silence hung in the air, broken only by the ragged gasps of their breaths. Baran, his leg throbbing painfully, leaned heavily against Kale. Darrow, his spear slick with a vile green ichor, surveyed their surroundings. Gone were the familiar rolling hills and whispering grasses of their territory. In their place stretched a desolate wasteland of cracked earth and twisted rock formations, alien and menacing. The air itself felt heavy, thick with an oppressive silence. beyond the Razorback Ridge. It's a long shot, but our only hope. Kale and Darrow exchanged a hesitant look. The stories of the oasis were just that, stories, whispered legends with little basis in reality. Yet, they had nothing else. With a shared nod, they fell in step behind Baran, their pace a desperate shuffle as they pushed on into the unforgiving alien landscape. Behind them, the metallic giant continued its methodical march, the reptilian horrors slithering silently in its wake. The three hunters, battered, lost, and pursued, were on a desperate gamble for survival, venturing ever deeper into a land of nightmares. The relentless sun beat down on the desolate landscape as the three men pressed on. Days blurred into nights, hunger gnawing at their bellies and exhaustion weighing on their limbs. Baran's leg, splinted with scavenged branches, throbbed with every step. Yet, they dared not stop. The metallic behemoth remained a menacing shadow on the horizon, and with each passing hour, the reptilian tracks became more frequent. Then, as dusk painted the sky in hues of orange and purple, a low growl pierced the stillness. Darrow, ever vigilant, skidded to a halt, pointing towards a cluster of jagged rocks ahead. Glowing eyes gleamed from the shadows, dozens of reptilian forms slithering out, their bodies grotesquely distended with hunger. Baran, fueled by a desperate defiance, roared a challenge. "We fight back," he bellowed, his voice hoarse but firm. Kale, ever the strategist, scanned the terrain. "Those rocks. Use them for cover." The air crackled with a primal tension. Baran, leaning heavily on his makeshift crutch, planted his spear in the ground and used it as a makeshift shield. Kale, nimble and swift, danced between the boulders, his spear a blur of deadly strikes. Darrow, young but fierce, channeled his fear into a controlled fury, his spear finding its mark with deadly accuracy. The first lizard fell with a sickening shriek, its glistening body convulsing on the cracked earth. The metallic tang of blood filled the air, a grim counterpoint to the guttural growls. The remaining reptiles, surprised by the ferocity of their prey, hesitated for a moment. Seeing their momentary doubt, Baran let out a thunderous war cry. He may have been injured, but his spirit remained unbroken. The sound seemed to echo across the wasteland, a defiant roar against the encroaching darkness. With renewed vigor, the three men pressed their attack. Baran, fueled by adrenaline, used his spear like a club, smashing the skull of a charging lizard. Kale, his movements a deadly dance, dismembered another with a swift, precise thrust. Darrow, his spear slick with gore, screamed a primal battle cry as he ran one of the creatures through with a savage blow. The tide was turning. The remaining reptiles, faced with such unexpected resistance, began to falter. Their hisses grew less menacing, their movements more hesitant. Sensing their fear, the men pressed their advantage. With a final coordinated attack, they sent two more of the creatures writhing in the dust. A deafening screech pierced the air, a chilling sound that seemed to vibrate in their bones. Turning, they saw the remaining lizards cowering before a hulking figure at the back of the pack, an alpha, its body twice the size of its brethren. This one, they realized with a jolt of dread, wouldn't be so easily deterred. But before the alpha could launch its attack, a thunderous boom shook the earth. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and a blinding light filled their vision. The metallic giant, having finally caught up, loomed over the scene, its colossal form casting a monstrous shadow. A wave of relief washed over the men, quickly replaced by a surge of apprehension. They had escaped the reptilian threat, but the metallic monstrosity presented a far greater danger. As the giant descended, blotting out the last rays of the setting sun, the three hunters stood together, their faces grim but resolute. They were battered and broken, but they wouldn't back down. They would face whatever came next, together. The metallic behemoth descended with a bone-jarring thud. Its movements were ponderous, deliberate, each step leaving a crater in the cracked earth. The air shimmered with the heat radiating from its glowing red vents. Baran, Kale, and Darrow huddled in the meager protection of the rocks, spears held tight, their breaths ragged in the dust-choked air. "It doesn't seem interested in the lizards," Kale rasped, his voice laced with a desperate hope. "Maybe it just wants to pass through?" The thought was fleeting. With a metallic screech, a panel on the giant's chest slid open, revealing a dark maw. A blinding beam of white light erupted, scouring the area where the last reptilian survivors had cowered. The stench of burning flesh filled the air, a grim confirmation of the giant's capabilities. "No way it's just going to ignore us," Darrow said, his voice trembling. Fear had etched deep lines on his youthful face. Baran, ever the leader, slammed his spear butt onto the ground. "We can't just sit here. We need a plan." They scanned the desolate landscape, their eyes searching for any kind of advantage. The only option was the jagged cluster of rocks that now served as their meager fortress. But what plan could they possibly devise against such a colossal machine? Suddenly, Kale, his eyes gleaming with a spark of desperate inspiration, pointed towards the rocks. "Look," he said, his voice tight with excitement. "There's a narrow passage, almost hidden." "Maybe." His words were cut short by another earth-shattering tremor. The giant had shifted its position, its glowing red eye fixated on the cluster of rocks. A low hum resonated from its metallic depths, a chilling prelude to what was to come. "There's no time," Baran yelled, his voice hoarse but filled with determination. "We have to trust Kale." With a shared nod, they charged towards the narrow passage, weaving between the jagged boulders. The air screamed as the giant unleashed a torrent of energy from its eye, blasting apart the rocks they had just vacated. Dust and debris rained down around them as they squeezed through the narrow opening, their bodies scraped and bruised. They emerged on the other side, panting and battered, to find themselves at the edge of a deep ravine. The metallic behemoth loomed above, its monstrous form blocking any hope of escape. But below, nestled within the crevice of the ravine, a faint glimmer caught their eye, a thin trickle of water snaking its way through the cracked rock face. "The oasis!" Baran cried, his voice hoarse with relief. The elders spoke the truth. Without hesitation, they rappelled down the rocky face, using their spears and torn strips of clothing as makeshift ropes. The descent was treacherous, but the promise of water and a possible hiding place fueled their desperate scramble. Finally, they reached the bottom, collapsing onto the damp earth beside the glistening stream. Exhaustion overwhelmed them, their bodies screaming in protest. But as they drank deeply from the cool water, a newfound determination flickered in their eyes. They may have escaped the immediate threat, but the metallic giant still loomed above. The oasis might be their temporary haven, but their journey was far from over. The question now hung heavy in the air: how do you fight a creature of metal with nothing but spears and courage? The answer remained unknown, lost in the vast emptiness beyond the ravine's edge. But one thing was certain: these three hunters wouldn't go down without a fight. They had faced reptilian nightmares and the wrath of a metal giant. They would find a way. They had to. The end. Don't forget to like and subscribe.